Very good. Yes, we are in the afternoon. One of the great beauties of Davos, and I am more of a critic of Davos than most, besides all coming here to improve the state of the world, committed to improving the state of the world, is I think the best sessions are not the economic ones, they're not the tedious geopolitical ones where everybody says exactly what you'd expect them to say. It's sessions like this, where you're going to hear from people who have an interesting, different, and absolutely crucial point of view that is going to truly widen your Davos experience. Anybody can pontificate about how to solve the Middle East crisis, and there are plenty of sessions in this building that will do that. But what we're going to hear today from our two guests is how we can literally, forget improving the state of the world, think about improving yourself first, because everything begins at home. Tom Daley, of course, is the diver, cultural leader, and Asma, the founder of Darjeeling Express UK. Now, I'm going to start with each of you. The thing's called Defying the Odds. So I want each of you to begin by telling me, briefly, what for you was defying the odds. Start with you first, and then we'll come to you, Tom.
Being a second daughter, there wasn't anything that anyone thought I could do in life. I was always made to feel I didn't count, pretty much felt like I was always, rejected for everything, not taken seriously. It didn't help that I was dark-skinned and fat. I think that really, in India at that time, was an issue. But I always felt I was going to be someone amazing. I felt the world would know my name, that my name would be in lights. But the odds were really that I would just be this person whose soul was crushed because everybody didn't care about me.
Did you feel it was personal to you, or was that just the way it is for that child in that hierarchy?
I think it's for a lot of girls in that hierarchy. People don't speak about it, girls don't speak about it, but there is always that feeling that you're not the chosen one, that you're not the special one. And the scars never go. I carry it with me.
Okay, now let's start with your beginning of defying.
I mean, there's lots of instances in sport where you could say it defies odds. But for me, I think going from such a young age, the first time I qualified for the Olympics, I was 13 years old. And I think at that point, that was something that lots of people in the sporting world might have considered defying the odds because, I was competing against people at least twice my age.
I want to go a bit further back.
Yes.
What is the moment when you realized that you had a talent and others told you that that talent wasn't just parents being nice about children, but actually was something that was going to take it? What age were you?
I was 7 when I started, and then when I was, the first 2 years I was diving, I used to cry on the end of the diving board all the time. And it was actually my coach said the opposite to me at the time, that I would never make a diver in my life and that I should forget about it. And I think I had a lot of people telling me that I would never make it as a diver. And when someone tells you you can't do something, of course it fuels you to go and do it.
So you have the situation where you're told you can't.
Yes.
And you have the situation where nobody's really bothering to tell you anything, except other you're just sort of ignored.
Yes.
So you then spend most of your adult life doing what?
I did it was what was deep inside my soul, my dream. I just decided that I was going to follow my instinct, not care about the box in which everyone wanted to put me in. So I learned to cook, I studied, and I was absolutely obsessed with the idea of having a restaurant.
Okay, but whilst you're feeding this obsession, literally and figuratively, what are you doing work-wise? What are you doing family-wise? What are you doing, what's the public persona?
The public persona is a perfect Indian housewife. I had 2 boys. I studied law, I did really well, I did a PhD in law. My husband's a professor in economics, so ticking all the boxes. I learned to cook biryani. I used to have these big parties, and I dressed correctly. I wore shalwar kameez. I love jewelry. I did all the right things. The clothes and the jewelry is still my passion, but everything else.
But there's something nagging away at you.
Yes, there was.
With you?
Yes.
you're good at it. You're now rising up the ladder, literally and figuratively.
Yes.
What happens then?
So I go into the Beijing Olympic Games. It's my first games, and you know the pressure that goes into competing at an Olympics where you get one chance every 4 years. The beauty of 2008 was the fact that I was young and I knew I was going there for the experience, and I had many Olympics to go. And the Olympic gold medal was always the thing that I really wanted to achieve. But going into London 2012, the pressure of diving in front of a home crowd was immense because people just assumed that you were going to come away with an Olympic medal. And it wasn't as easy as that. Luckily I did, but it wasn't necessarily the color that I wanted to and dreamed of.
I need to concentrate on the darker side.
Yes.
Which is, as those tensions are building up within you, how are they manifesting themselves in a negative way?
There were so many different things that I struggled with when I was dealing with pressure when I was younger, because it wasn't just the pressure of competition and the pressure of performing for my country. It was also dealing with my sexuality. It was also dealing with eating disorders, because, you know, in the world of sport, especially a sport like diving, I mean, you know, there's not many people that wear more clothes to bed than to work, but that was kind of the uniform. So I ended up, like, my diving, like, higher ups were very, very strict with me about what I could eat and what I couldn't eat and what I looked like. So that created all kinds of different pressures that I had to deal with on that side as well.
I think it's worth emphasizing, and you know, that for a gay man, this is turmoil on steroids.
Yeah, I mean, lots of gay men already suffer a lot with body dysmorphia and eating disorders, more than people actually would consider even talking about, because at the time I was 17 at the time when I was first told that I was fat and had to lose weight, and I ended up having to lose something like 7 kilos or something. So I ended up dropping a lot of weight, but didn't have the support around me to be able to do it. So it was like a really terrifying experience to have to go through that on my own.
Back in your kitchen, you're plotting, aren't you?
Yes.
How do you go? Look, we've all. My husband is terrified that I'm going to give up my job and open a small hotel or a B&B, because that's what I want to do. But don't worry, I'm not going to. It would be a disaster all round. But, you know, we all have this ambition, we all have this goal, and I'd like to hear from some people in the room of what your secret little gnawing ambition is. How does your gnawing ambition go from making biryanis for the family and friends to actually doing it professionally?
It was humiliation.
What?
There was a dry cleaner that closed below my street. I went to my bank and I asked for £10,000. I had an account there, and I said I'm going to open a tea shop. So it wasn't even that I dared think.
Go back further, sorry. You've jumped the gun here. Why did you even think that you would? I mean, we don't wake up on a Tuesday morning in October and say, I'm going to open a tea shop, and there's one downstairs, and I'm going to go and bond 10,000. What was the catalyst for that?
It was a gentleman I met. We've all forgotten about the war in Sarajevo. I was in Cambridge. My husband was teaching at Cambridge, and I was selling samosas. And he was definitely of Middle Eastern origin. He bought the samosa, came back and gave me, I thought was fake money. It was those big 50-pound notes. I thought, I'd never seen that. It was like play money. Bought 3 samosas, and he told me, may Allah bless your hands. There's something magical about you. I could never get that out of my mind.
Wow.
And when I saw that dry cleaner, I thought, samosas. I'm going to sell samosa and tea, because that man years ago in Cambridge told me, bless your hands, your samosa is beautiful. And that's why I went to the bank and asked for money, thinking they'd just give it to me.
Did you have, once you'd done that, did you have the people that Tom had saying, you'll never make it? This is lunacy. What on earth are you doing, woman? Middle-age crisis.
Yes, a lot of people said that. And someone even suggested that I buy Harley Davidson. Might be better for everyone if I just rode into the sunset. And, but I really wanted to feed people, and I didn't know how to do it. Also, at that time, this is 10 years ago, you saw nobody like me anywhere. There was Mother Jaffrey and then nobody. So I had a PhD in law. I was a lawyer, a mother, but I didn't know anyone in the restaurant business. And looking from a distance, it looked like a male, all-white male Mayfair club where women could turn up, but they were not members.
If you had been on the outside looking at you, what would you have told yourself? You're barking mad.
No. I told myself every day.
No. If you had been somebody else.
Oh yes, of course.
If you had been talking about somebody else.
No, everybody, I absolutely would have said, quit now, stay in your lane, and you'll be fine. Stay in your lane.
Mm. The difference with you is you have these repeated moments when you have to perform.
Yeah.
And at any moment, the whole lot can come crashing down because you lose, or you don't succeed as well. That's a hell of a pressure.
Yeah, I mean, the pressure that you feel going into a competition, especially when you have trained for 4 years, where you're training 6 to 8 hours a day in, day out, for that one day, that one moment, 6 dives. It's incredibly terrifying, and you want to do really well. And of course, you have all of the competitions in between, the nationals, Europeans, and worlds. But the Olympics is the big one. And it's the fact that it's only every 4 years, and as you get older, you understand that you're going to have less chance at going to the next one. So every time you go, you want to make it count.
Okay, so within that construct, you learn to knit.
Yes, I do. It was one of my ways of dealing with pressure, because in Rio 2016, I was 22, and I was like, it's my 3rd Olympics, and this is going to be the one where I win an Olympic gold medal. Came away with the bronze in the synchro, and in the individual, got an Olympic record in the prelim, semi-final, absolutely crashed out and didn't make the final. And I was so devastated that I hadn't got an Olympic gold medal. And it was afterwards my husband said to me, your story doesn't end here. Maybe you didn't win an Olympic gold medal today because your future children are meant to see you win an Olympic gold medal. So then flash forward to Robbie being born in 2018, pandemic happening. That was when I picked up my knitting needles.
Again, you don't just do that on a random Tuesday in October.
It was my coach. So it was my coach who said to me, you are always on the go, you're always doing something. And although you train really hard, it's just as important to rest and recover. But on the weekend, you're always going to museums, you're going to markets, you're exploring. I want you to be able to sit still and do nothing so that you come in on Monday as well rested as you possibly can be. So then my husband, who works in film and TV, said to me, lots of people on set knit squares just to pass the time. So I was like, okay, I'll give that a go. Ordered the yarn, ordered the needles, went onto the YouTube University and taught myself to knit.
Are you knitting for purpose? In other words, there is a scarf at the end of it. There is a sweater, or are you just knitting?
Initially, it was to learn, and it was absolutely awful to start with. But then every project I did, I started off with a scarf for my mum for Mother's Day in March 2020. And I was like, I'm going to start with that. And then every project I did got progressively harder and learned a new stitch. And then once I felt like I was pretty proficient in knitting, I then learned how to crochet, and then I started learning how to design things myself and create patterns.
Hang on. Can anyone see the pattern here? We're no longer, and by the way, we'll do the same with you. We're no longer in the realms of mindfulness.
Yeah.
Now the new obsession started.
I mean, it definitely became an obsession, but it was the one time in my day where I used to look forward to it, and like every day, it was the one time my mind went quiet, the counting of the stitches, the movement, the consistency of it. It just allowed me to zone out and be in the present moment. And I do genuinely think that coming to Tokyo, where I ended up winning the gold medal, and because of the COVID Olympics, there was so much time to overthink. There was no socializing, you couldn't talk to anyone. So I didn't want to be thinking all the time about my competition and worrying about that and stressing about it. So knitting became my escape from all of that. And I genuinely think without knitting, I would not have won an Olympic gold medal.
How do you then, in the same genre, how do you take yourself out of yourself?
I'm so impressed listening to him. I feel like I should start knitting.
I can teach you, don't worry.
I fail on that front. I am never at rest. I'm constantly thinking, and
you're still running the race.
Yes.
I mean, you're still chasing it.
It is. I am. And the thing is that what I'm very conscious of is that every day I live one day less. I'm 55 years old. I'm a Muslim immigrant. I began my food journey at 45. I know that there are a lot of people who, looking at me, want to be where I am, and I want them to know that this is achievable, that you can be successful. And I know that I'm probably burning myself to keep others warm. But I feel there is something deep inside me that I want to be the name of that person, for that person can name me.
Right.
Because I had nobody to look to.
But have you accepted the fact you're never going to reach that destination because it's an unobtainable destination?
Sometimes, yes.
Because that's what you're sort of saying you've reached, in a way. I mean, something else will come along that will generate a new...
I also think a similar thing is that you have to dream big, because if you don't think that if you don't dream like that and you don't think that you can, you never will. So you always have to think that you can achieve it, because as soon as you allow the doubt that you won't, if you don't think you will, then you never will.
Yes, and for me, failure was not an option. And also, it was so important for me to clear the pathways for future leaders. For girls who are not born yet, I'm sowing a harvest. I will not reap. This is what drives me. I want to be that person who has cleared the pathway. I will not live to see a woman walking into a kitchen and owning it. But I want to be there every day, working towards that goal, that it becomes acceptable, someone who looks like me, accented with the name that I have, to be accepted as someone in hospitality, on par with everyone else. It is absolutely my this is what I push myself so hard for.
The problem with Davos is, people can hear you say that and identify with it. But of course, this is an environment of, everybody's equal and everybody's thinks. I mean, you come to Davos and everybody's intelligent and everybody's engaged and everybody's talking, and there's a quote liberal elite or a conservative elite, depending on which way, which view of Washington you've got at any given moment. And actually, that's not the real world, is it?
It's not.
No, but I think the most important thing for people to do here is, I think, lead by example and create that visibility for people to think that they might be able to. And that's what Asma is talking about in terms of the visibility of you being able to own a restaurant and being able to be the person that you are today will pave the way for others. It's a similar thing in sport. There aren't many out athletes. And if you go back to London 2012, there were 27 out athletes. You go to fast forward to Tokyo and to Paris, there were more out athletes in the Tokyo Games than all of the previous games combined, which is just, again, through visibility and feeling like that people can start to see themselves in sport. It's not like they weren't there in the first place. Yeah. It's more now feeling like people are comfortable enough to be able to be themselves.
So continuing to defy the odds, you have both reached a level of success. Don't disagree with me, please. You both reached a level of success that if you do nothing else for the rest of your life, we'll be fine, thank you very much. It's more than most people. But how do you now capitalize on it? And by that, I don't mean for personal gain. I mean, you see, you talk about the girl that's not yet born, the kitchen that's not yet built. How do you put paid to actually actuate and execute that? And for you, it's about, right, well, how old were you when you retired?
I retired last year, so 30.
He looks so young.
No.
Adam, he is young.
No, but,
He looks like, oh my God.
No,
okay.
but 30 for me is like, that was like after Tokyo, I retired for 2 years because I didn't think I was coming back.
So you've retired?
Yeah, I'm done, yeah. No, I'm done. I'm done.
But you've got another however many years.
Yeah, well, I'll say, so retired in terms of, that's the weird thing with sport, is that it's such a young career that when you finish, and I'm fortunate that I have other things to do, but there are many athletes that find themselves in an awkward position where they retire at 30, that's all they've done their whole life, and then they have to start a job, and they have to go back as if they were 18 years old and then build their career up from there. So sometimes you're at a disadvantage from being an athlete your whole life, whereas for me, my whole passion now, like, it started to transition into knitting. I had my most successful competitions throughout knitting, and now I set up Made with Love, which essentially I design knitwear for people to be able to make themselves. And the legacy that I'd like to leave behind is the mindful aspect of knitting that I found to be so incredibly powerful, to be able to pass that on to other people so that they can, and it doesn't have to be knitting. It can be crochet, it can be candle making, it can be embroidery, but something where you can slow down and be present and in the moment. It's something I would love to be able to get into a school curriculum for kids to learn these skills and do these crafts in a way to be able to get them to slow down, come away from screens and, you know, pick up a valuable skill.
Taking that thought and developing your own version of it, you've got a very successful restaurant. You're a very successful businesswoman in your own right. You're extremely well known. You could retire tomorrow if you wanted to. So what's your version of his knitting and crafts work and going into schools?
I want to open a school for leadership for women, because I think that a lot of women who make it, and they define success in male terms. My kitchen is a collective of women, and I think what I really want to do, using Darjeeling Express and what I've achieved so far, is to open doors to create a collective, a tribe of women, where the tribe everyone doesn't look the same. I want to have women gathering together to transfer skills, to teach each other, so that there are more women who, this is my second innings. I want more women to have that opportunity. You don't have to stay in your lane. I want to open doors, teach skills, inspire, put my hand around more women. So my dream really is to have a collective of women, a school for leadership.
You see, in many ways, this is the wrong title, Defying the Odds, because Defying the Odds got you where you are. And to a certain extent, that's nature-nurture, isn't it? I mean, you train, you're good at, you train very hard, you become a world-class diver. You have talent, you work very hard, you end up with a great enterprise, of culinary enterprise. But it's really the second innings that you talk of that's going to be arguably the most satisfying for you. I mean, the gold medal will always be, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody had said to me that at 26 years old that I was going to start knitting, I would have laughed at you, because I was like, what do you mean? Because there's, I guess, some odds are defied in the way that men don't necessarily knit. It's usually seen as something that older women do. And I think being able to change that demographic a little bit, and also just understanding that once I started knitting in that community online and seeing the amount of people that knit of all ages, all genders, all races, being able to see that community come together over craft, I think is extremely special. And it is kind of, I guess it would defy the odds if that kind of became my next thing, because who'd have thought going from diving to knitting was going to be the transition?
We'll take a question from the audience. Anybody got a question? Questions?
No questions. Well, we've answered them all.
Oh, Quadros. Stunned into silence. Come along, come along. While you're all thinking about brave enough to ask a question, this idea of, I guess, okay, one of my great fears when I finally stopped broadcasting, and I'm 62, when I finally do, it's when somebody comes up to you and says, didn't you used to be Richard Quest? Didn't you used to be? I used to be. To your extent, you're going to get that. You were a diver, but you are building something in addition that hopefully in 15, 20 years' time, you are Tom Daley, the diver, but who's really now known for mindfulness, guru on knitting or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, after the Tokyo Games, where I was first photographed knitting poolside, lots of people came up to me saying, you're the knitter and not the diver. So some people know me for my knitting and some people know me for my diving, and some people know for both, but it's interesting how, like you say, that transition in the future is probably going to be Tom the knitter rather than Tom the diver, but who knows?
You happy with that?
Yeah, I mean, I love knitting so much.
Why?
Because
by the way, do we have a knitter in here?
No question.
He has a question.
Knitting is so satisfying.
Go on.
Not a knitter yet, but you both are. You were in a profession that was very physical, running a restaurant with people, sport, but you also have huge online communities already. You're both talking about a community. How do you interact with that community? And how many followers do you have, Tom? So many, and people. And I'm sure it's the same for you. how do you build that online and personal presence? And
I mean, for me, it was part of my generation has always been to share things with friends and family through social media. And, you know, it's in this age of social media, I've always had certain rules around my social media that I only ever follow people that either inspire me, make me laugh, or make me feel good. If at any point anybody doesn't make you feel good, then I go straight away to not have them appear in my social media. But the way that I ended up gaining a following was through the Olympics. Is every time I go to an Olympics, there's always something that, you know, increases that. But for me, that's where the knitting came from. I went from like a 60,000 follower account to like 1.2 million overnight. Just
because of knitting?
Just because of knitting.
Because there are a lot of people out there.
That was my knitting account.
Maybe I should start
That was just the knitting account. But yeah, it was...
Well, come on, you're no slouch yourself.
No, but not anywhere near that. But I was shocked at the amount of emotion and stories that people were writing to me on DM when my Chef's Table episode came out, because there I spoke about this feeling of being a second daughter. I do my own social media and I respond to everyone. There was a time when I was writing 100 messages a day, replying to everybody. It matters to me because if in a bazaar someone stopped me and said, you know, talk to me, would I walk away? No. So I run my social media in a very kind of emotional way. I respond to people. He responded to me. I connected to him. We are going to talk together. He was like, yeah, we're going to do it. So it's really nice when someone, you know, you see the persona, they're actually replying to your messages. Because a lot of them, you know, when they're actually somebody running it for them. And I think it's really important. It's important to be authentic and real.
I found that people would write to me or email or DM me, particularly email, in the early days of email, and they would tell me I'm the worst thing that they'd ever seen. They could not stand me. One person told me that they wished I'd been aborted before birth.
Wow.
But what they don't do, they don't expect you to reply.
They don't expect you to see it.
And 90% of people are courteous. And so I used to write back to these people, dear Mr. Smith, I'm sorry you think I'm the biggest piece of shit in the world.
Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed some of my other colleagues, and I hope you'll continue to watch CNN. Yours truly, Richard Quest, CNN. They would usually reply immediately.
Yes.
Because they've been caught out being rude.
Yeah.
Except for one guy who wrote back to me saying, dear Mr. Quest, I got your email. I still think you're a big piece of shit, but at least you're a classy one.
At least you replied.
Yeah, at least you replied. Yeah, so back to the fascinating part is, which I always have a difficulty with people like yourselves, is how far can we replicate? And I don't mean diving. How much of it is nature nurture? How much let's go back to that big bit, you being told you can't dive, you being told that, you know, whatever, second daughter and be a housewife and even that. How much of that fire and passion have we all got? Or are you in your individual ways unique? Can we replicate it in our own lives?
I genuinely think the power of manifestation is real. I feel like I've manifested my Olympic gold medal. I feel like I've manifested lots of things that have happened in my life. One example of that is during the COVID lockdown, we used to do this thing where on Fridays we would do a date night where one would cook and one would come up with an activity, me and my husband. So one week I decided we were going to paint canvases. The next week, they were that awful that we decided to try and cover them with, my husband's idea was we were going to write on them what our ambitions were for the next 5 years and cover it with gold leaf and put it by the front door so that every day we left the house knowing what our purpose was and what we wanted to achieve. And I feel like that power of manifestation is what I think can take people that want to do it and think about it and think, oh yeah, maybe I will, maybe I'll do it. But if you make it your utmost priority, you will get somewhere close to it at least. Maybe you won't necessarily become Olympic champion or whatever it is, but you will get on your way. For
me, faith is a very important thing. Faith is what holds me steady, and I run on faith. It's a very personal thing, how I feel about everything, and I think that that's my strength. And I always feel that for those who are lost and were looking for an anchor, it can be replicated. You need to find the strength within you. If you don't believe in yourself, no one will believe in you.
That's the hard part.
It's true.
That is the hard part. Your goal for 25?
Oh, gosh. To start, I'd love to start a Made with Love Foundation. I would love to be able to get that going to help bring mindfulness and craft to as many people as possible.
Your goal for 25?
I want to speak about kindness and acceptance and I'm worried about everything that's happening. I think food and politics goes together, and I think everyone should speak up.
Ladies and gentlemen.